and IIM Ahmedabad, amongst others. Over the past 8 years, Ramiz has been working globally in the USA, India, Nepal, and now in UAE. He has also lived and studied in Peru, South America. He is multilingual in English, Spanish, Hindi, and Gujarati. Some of his specialities include career counseling, leadership management, community outreach, event planning, and public speaking. So, as you all know, we have someone who is everything. He is good at everything you can think of, and I hope you guys have a very, very lucrative session with him. Listen carefully, take down notes if you have to, because this is going to be something you want to hear. Over to you, Mr. Ramesh.
Thank you, Ms. Krishni, for the introduction. And I just want to let everyone know we have this outdoor cleaning happening. So if you hear the noise, please disregard that. And I don't want to waste a lot of time. So let me just get right onto it. And so this presentation is going to be about studying in Canada. I know at this time right now, there has been a lot of, discussion with the COVID-19 and all this happening. And pretty much Dubai being a region, UAE being this region where majority of the students tend to go abroad for education, right? And it's not always just US and UK. And Canada has kind of gotten a lot of attention in the late years for many reasons. One is that it has a great quality and a higher quality of education. Some of the universities are in the world ranking. And on top of that, it gives you the option to apply for study permit and have a chance to get a long-term career prospects and be able to settle, immigrate to that country. So I'm going to cover as much as I can within the first 15 to 20 minutes. I know it may not cover all of it, so I would like to leave more room for Q&A. So if any questions you would have, I would be more than happy to answer that and have more time for it. But when it comes to studying in Canada, the ones universities that we normally hear, University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, University of British Columbia. These are the three universities that always top the chart for any particular subject ranking in Canada and at times in the world university ranking. But Canada, if you look at geographically, is a very big country. But when it comes to studying in Canada, it's not that you go to all parts of the country to study. There are few locations, few provinces which are more popular than the others. So getting on to that, if you look at, this is the map of Canada, okay? You have different territories, Yukon, Northwest Territories, Nunavut, British Columbia, Alberta, and all that. Now, if you look at carefully, the number 1, 2, 3, these are the northern territories of Canada. They tend to be very, very, they have an amazing natural landscape and, just mountains and lakes and all that. But when it comes to students going to study in Canada, they normally tend to go on the lower part, which is 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we're talking about British Columbia, Ontario, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Montreal. Canada's official language is English. However, if you are going to be going in Quebec, which is right here, which is one of the bigger regions, and this shares a border with United States, the official language over there is French. The people over there do speak English, but they choose to speak French more often than not. Okay, so as I say, when it comes to education, these are the lower regions of Canada which are very popular. But before I go into talking about what are those universities, I want to go back to just looking at the curriculum. There's a lot of discussion about students, and parents when it comes to applying to this university. So we may be familiar with this concept of, studying particular subjects if you're coming from Indian curriculum, IB, American, British. In the last 2 years of high school, you do specialize, you do take specific advanced courses. If you're from Indian curriculum, you're going to choose science, humanities, or commerce stream. If you're coming from the IB curriculum, your IB Diploma 1 IBDP program, which is of 2 years, you take HL and SL courses. The same thing applies to British curriculum, the same thing applies to American curriculum. Irrespective of whatever subjects you study in that, this is something Canada gives you an option where if you're applying to Canadian universities, you have a flexible curriculum. Okay, flexible curriculum is where you're required to choose a major subject. However, during the course, you have the flexibility to choose additional major, additional minor, or cluster courses. Well, so let me just give you a simple example. If I'm interested in studying computer science, or if I'm interested in studying psychology, I have aligned my high school courses, in a way that would, meet the prerequisites for me to apply to a university, which is great because UK requires that. Okay, but when it comes to Canada, they are a flexible curriculum, which means that even if you have taken those subjects and you want to study that, or you realize after 2 years of finishing high school that, no, I don't want to study that, Canadian universities would still look at your high school diploma as on its own. They would still give you an option to transfer to, change your area of interest to apply to the university. Now, this doesn't happen only at the time of when you start your studies. Over the period of your 4 years, which I like to highlight, that when you go to study in the UK, the standard degree duration is 3 years, unless you're going for engineering. But when you're going for Canada, irrespective of whether it's engineering, business, commerce, humanities, sociology, international relations, excuse me, the duration of your degree is going to be minimum 4 years. Okay. When I say minimum 4 years, it means that, sometimes because Canadian universities give you the option to integrate work, paid internships as part of your curriculum, the duration of your degree can lengthen from 4 years to 5 years or 5 to 6 years. That doesn't mean that you're paying any extra amount, because even if the duration is longer, you're still going to pay for the 4 years. But during those 6 months or whatever you do, you are working with a particular employer in order to get that practical experience in regards to whatever you're studying. But the education is divided into two segments. The first 2 years are considered lower division, and the last 2 years are considered upper division. In the lower division courses, Canadian universities don't want you to, just focus on one particular subject. They want you to, be educated. So there is a standard general education requirement which applies to every student irrespective of whichever area of interest you have. Okay, so this would cover some of the seminar courses to improve your writing, some of the social sciences, arts, and business, marketing, business and science courses. In the second year, if you realize that, initially you had prepared, you thought you wanted to study computer science, and now you realize you don't want to do it, you have the option to switch your major from computer science to something else. So what that means is that when you're applying to Canadian university, you don't apply for a particular program. So you're not applying for a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. You're applying for a Bachelor of Science degree, which would have other courses in that faculty. That would be physics, chemistry, and biology, and so on and so forth. So this is what the flexible curriculum basically means, that you can change when you're applying for the degree, you get accepted into the degree, and then throughout your first and second year, you can change your area of interest, area of focus. And so flexible curriculum gives you that opportunity that when you don't know exactly what you want to study and what is going to be in demand 4 years down the line and how you can have that competitive advantage, the best option to do would be to speak to the professors, because every single professor who's teaching at the university holds a terminal degree in their area of interest. So you get that opportunity to speak to them, understand how the field is changing and how you can align your interest towards that. Okay. So as I said, when it comes to Canada, again, you're not going to find a big list of universities. There are only about 98, 99 universities in Canada. Okay. The rest you're going to see colleges. Colleges are slightly different than universities, but whenever we have students who are applying, they apply to universities because universities are the ones that offers degrees up to the PhD level. Colleges are only designed to provide you education up until your bachelor's level, undergraduate level. So this is a major difference between college and a university. Okay. Now, in terms of why students choose to go to Canada, yes, they have great quality of education. They're providing flexible curriculum. They're giving you 3 years of post-study work option irrespective of whatever you study. This is the biggest difference between US and Canada. Please remember that. If you apply to US and you're going for studies like STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, only then you would be given a 3-year post-study option to work in US. But if you're going to Canada, it doesn't matter what program you're studying, your degree would give you a 3-year post-study work option and then a chance to get a PR. Okay, so the primary location that you're going to find, apart from all of these reasons that you have, Canadian universities also have the lowest tuition fees. If you just compare UK, Canada, and US. Okay, so it works out for a lot of students in regards to if they want to be mindful of the cost. When I say the lowest tuition fee, I still mean your undergraduate tuition fee for 1 year, including your living cost, may end up being somewhere around, the lowest would be about 35,000 Canadian dollars. And it can go up to as much as 70,000 Canadian dollars just for 1 year. So you have limited universities, you have the tuition fees, and you have the locations, and you have the flexibility. When it comes to studying in Canada, again, just like US and UK, the major intake is going to be September, which is the fall intake of every year. It's a good thing because some students, the IB curriculum students finish their diploma in July. The Indian curriculum students finish their degree, they get their results in the month of May or June. So it changes for everyone, right? But by the time you start your program, you would have completed your high school. So the universities, that's how they're able to make sure that the students from some particular curriculum are not at a disadvantage. There is another intake, which is going to be January. That is called the winter or spring intake. However, not every university is going to offer you any undergraduate courses at this level. So the major intake would be September, which is the fall, and then the spring intake, which would be January. Okay. Now, again, I want to be mindful of the time. So I'll talk about the scholarships. Okay, there is a lot of, apart from being the lowest tuition fees and all that, Canadian universities do not offer you scholarships in a way of financial aid. They offer you scholarship based on your merit. Okay, but because they have lower tuition fees and there is a lot of competition in because of the stay-back options and all that, scholarships are offered as an entrance award. So US has a particular US is very attractive for students because whatever scholarships you get in the first year, you get it for the duration of 4 years. However, when you apply for scholarships, which are few available, it can range from anywhere between 2,000 Canadian dollars to maximum 20,000 Canadian dollars. And this would be a one-time entrance scholarship award that would be given to you. Okay. There are few competitive merit-based scholarships where your schools would need to nominate you. So University of Toronto has a presidential scholarship where your school can nominate one student from the entire school, to be considered for that scholarship. That doesn't mean just because your school nominated, you will get it. Because from around the world, University of Toronto would offer 37 such students this full scholarship where your entire tuition fee and the living cost will be covered for the duration of 4 years. Okay. So if you're looking for scholarship like that for University of Toronto, your school counselor will give you more information about that. But in general, when it comes to applying to any other entrance awards, they don't have any separate application process. As long as you apply to a university by the particular deadline, you would be automatically considered for that. Now, as I said, when it comes to Canada, there are two major regions which are very popular among UAE students and parents. One is Ontario, and other one is British Columbia. Okay, so Ontario universities, what they have done, that they have created a consortium of one application portal where students can apply to any of the Ontario universities from that portal. But this is only for the Ontario region. It's not for the entire Canada. So please be mindful of that. So these are the universities that you're going to find under Ontario University applications. So if you look at it, University of Waterloo is also part of that. University of Toronto is also going to be part of that. Then you have York, you have Western, you have McMaster. These are all the great universities where students apply. But if you notice on this list, you're not going to find University of British Columbia. Because University of British Columbia, you would do a separate application to the university on their portal directly. But if it comes to applying to universities in Ontario, you would do an application here. If it comes to applying to any other province, be it Alberta, be it Saskatchewan, you would directly apply to the university through their portal. So it's very important for students to shortlist the number of universities they want to apply to beforehand and have a clear understanding of how they need to go about with the application process. Okay. Prerequisite, I want to clarify this thing. There's a lot of focus that students put on in terms of building their profile, doing different activities, and just doing anything and everything outside of the school curriculum, just so that they can have a better understanding of how they want to be in the university environment. However, Canadian universities, when you do those activities, if you have the certificate, you have the medal, you do not have to provide, you don't even have an option to provide those certificates on the university application. Because the universities are receiving too many applications, they don't have time to review all of them. They will still ask you to mention them in your application, but that is the extent to, this is the maximum what you would do. When you apply to UK universities, you are required to submit one recommendation letter, which comes from your subject teacher or your school counselor. When you apply to US universities, you submit anywhere between 2 to as many as 7 different recommendations. When it comes to applying to Canadian universities, you do not need to submit a recommendation letter. All you will be doing will be putting a name of a recommender and the contact details should the university want to get in touch with them for any particular questions later on. But as part of the application, there won't be any recommendation letter requirement as such. And the SAT exam, which is normally required for the US universities, if you are coming from an American curriculum, please note that you would need to take the SAT exam as part of your curriculum criteria to be eligible to apply to US universities. Apart from that, if you are an engineering or STEM student applying to very competitive universities like Waterloo, Toronto, and UBC, it is recommended doesn't matter which curriculum you're coming from, it is recommended that you take the SAT exam if you've done it, submit that score, and if you have a score above 1350 out of 1600 in your SAT exam, it can give you it is not a requirement, but it would be a major factor in terms of qualifying for additional scholarships and things like that. Especially for STEM programs, this is a very important thing that you need to keep in mind. English language admission test is the only requirement that you will see for students as part of the external examination that you need to take. Everything else you're doing in terms of your high school is what you need to provide. Other than that, the English language, which could be a TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language, or IELTS, academic section. Okay, but please note that if you are studying here in UAE, our first or second language is literally English. So you've been studying in your high school curriculum for the entire duration in English, right? So you can go to your school counselor, and your school counselor can issue you the letter, which will get you the waiver from the universities to submit this IELTS or TOEFL requirement. If you're from the IB and British curriculum, by default, you have that waiver. But if you're from American or Indian curriculum, please go to your school counselor, get that waiver, letter, which indicates that your primary language of instruction has been English, and you have been studying here at this school for this many years. And that would be sufficient of a requirement. If you are an Emirati, you may need to take this exam and the other exams that they may have in addition to the SAT or the IELTS. So Emirati students do have certain additional requirements. If you're a student like that, and if you have a particular university you want to apply to, please get in touch and we can tell you a little bit more about that as well. Again, so University of British Columbia, I said, this is a separate application that you're doing. They have two campuses. Their main campus is Vancouver, and they have other campus, which is Okanagan. I don't want to go too much in the university since I want to be mindful of the timeline. So I'm going to skip to the interview part. When it comes to applying to certain programs, as I mentioned earlier, that you don't apply for, let's say if you're interested in business, you don't apply for just the accounting program or marketing, you apply for a Bachelor of Commerce program. Okay, so as part of your Bachelor of Commerce program, you would be required to submit a recorded online interview. University of Waterloo, University of Toronto, University of British Columbia. These are the top 3 universities. They would have this additional requirement. So when you choose a program, the degree you want to apply for, you would be told by the university, these are the additional requirements, and you need to do that afterwards. So remember, your applications don't go in one submission deadline. There are going to be one university will have different deadlines. So your initial application deadline will be as early as November, the year before you start your program. So let's say if you're finishing your high school in May or June 2022 next year, and if you're going to start your degree in September 2022, so your deadline to apply to these universities will start from as early as November of this year. Okay, so that would be the initial just application submission deadline. Your documents, your predicted grades, they will be given to you by your schools later on. And to submit those document deadlines, the deadlines will be later on. So it's not like US or UK where you have one deadline and you need to submit everything all in one go. Okay, so it's very important to keep in mind if you want to be considered for scholarships, certain scholarships, there are particular deadlines which are mentioned on the university website. I would highly encourage you to look at that. And then on top of that, you would have the interview, which will be as part of your application criteria. Now, this interview is not for all the programs. It's only if you're applying for a business program at University of Toronto, University of British Columbia. So personal profile, this is where you stand right now. Okay, the personal profile is is basically for you to look at what are the different activities that you have done so far. Okay, so if you know that you're a very good swimmer and you are very good in MUN, these are the two of the activities that you have done. University of British Columbia will ask you to put up to 5 different activities over the past 4 years that you have done. And then they would ask you to elaborate on one or two of those activities in 350 words. Okay, so the best thing is always to diversify your list of activities than just focusing on one particular activity. So if you have done MUN for the past 4 years, that still becomes the one activity. But what it will highlight is that you've been dedicated for this activity for the past 4 years. Okay, so these activities do have a lot of advantage, not just for University of British Columbia, but in general, because the universities want to look at, apart from just studying in an academic class, environment, how else would you contribute to the overall diversity and the excellence of the university? They want students to be more actively engaged in communities. So if you're already an individual who have been doing that here or, in your surrounding communities, that gives them the reassurance that this is a student that they want. And please keep in mind the number of seats available for each university, they are not going to increase. But because of the COVID pandemic and all this happening right now, a lot of uncertainty in the UK and the US, a lot of students do tend to apply to universities in Canada. So the competition has gone up. So if you know for sure that your only destination is Canada, then there is no such thing as starting early if you're in the last 2 years of your high school. This is just to give you a general understanding of your grades, your test scores, your extracurricular activities. These are the basic elements that you're required. The second thing is to set yourself apart. So to submit a resume, to have an online interview, which I just briefly, covered. And then the third part is going to be about your skills, your awards, your internship. So this is all part of profile building, which will be helpful in your application. But if you don't have it, remember, this is not a by default requirement. This is extracurricular, basically means that if you have the time to do it, do it. But don't just start an extracurricular activity just because it would, look good in your application. Because I've worked in the admission office in the US in a university. So admission counselors can read your application and they can see if it's an activity, something that you are really passionate about, or if it's an activity, something that was done as a, just a tick mark that you need to get off your list of things you need to do to apply to universities. So this is your timeline for when you normally start for Canadian universities, right? So you start planning whatever you do right now, okay? So every year, so students who are going in their final year of high school, you'll finish your high school next year and then you'll start your degree in September, which would be the fall next year. You would need to start creating a plan, over the summer. And then the month of October, August, September, you put together everything. October, November is the time when you apply to the universities in Canada. December, January is when the deadlines get over. February and the month of March is when you start hearing back from the universities about your decisions. April, May is when you need to let the university know which university you want to go. And June and July is when you start applying for your study permit application. So I'll leave more room for questions.
Yes, students, if you do have any questions, please feel free to either unmute yourselves or you can just put it in the chat box and we will answer them for you.
I have a question from Shobit. What is the online interview? Can you please elaborate? Yes. So the online interview basically nowadays is that, back in the days, like when I applied for my college, I had an opportunity to go to visit my university, speak to the admission office, speak to them and just kind of see the environment, kind of help them get to see me, because there's a lot more to you than your academic grades only, right? And if I'm given the opportunity to talk to the person, then I can show them how I'm interested. So now the universities don't actually have that much time where they can offer you personalized interviews. So what they have done is that they still want to make sure, they want to get to know you closer. but they don't want to give you some pre-prepared, questions where you are spending your time to prepare it and do it. They want to say exactly how you can speak, how you can communicate when you're given a topic on the spot. So when you're applying for a business program specifically for Toronto and UBC, they want to look at it that the business degree is something where you need to have leadership quality, you need to be confident, you need to be, have excellent communication skills. So they will ask you certain questions. I know I had a student who was asked a question from University of Toronto as a part of their online interview, which was, if you're given $1 million for a social charity, not just to start a business, for a social charity, how would you want to invest that money and why? So then you're given the question, then you have 30 seconds to prepare, and then you have to record your answer for 90 seconds. Okay, and then they will just give you impromptu writing, assignment. They will give you a question like that, and then you need to write it. Okay. So University of British Columbia would have something similar. They wouldn't want to just ask you a question like introduce yourself, because your application is already doing that. But this is the business faculty who want to know specifically about what kind of student they're bringing in the classroom. I have another question from Ish. Will choosing a destination make choosing a course easier if I'm unsure of what I want to do? So yes, in a way, it does make it easier. So for example, if I understand your question correctly, if you know that you're applying to Canada, right, then you know that you are focusing your entire research on what are the courses which are provided, and then you would prepare yourself and you would align your courses and your extracurricular activities for that. But right now, what happens for my students that I work with, they don't just apply to Canada. They apply to US, UK, and Canada. So the application is very different now for all those three universities, right? So choosing a course over there becomes a little bit trickier because you would have a different requirement altogether. Do we have any more questions? I know I've gone through this very fast and you may have a lot of more questions, so I can understand that. So I'm just going to drop our contact details, my contact details. We are based out of Dubai, JLT here, on the chat. If anyone would like to get in touch to, discuss specifically about your profile and how to go about preparing for it, we would be more than happy to do that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mr. Ramiz. It has been indeed wonderful. It wasn't fast. Trust me. I think students nowadays are so used to the fast-paced life. I think this is something they like instead of some, continuous talking. But this was really good. And let's hope and pray that people can travel soon so they get back on their feet and students can experience how it is to go abroad. But till then, if there are any queries, please feel free to either contact us or directly Mr. Ramiz, and we shall take it forward from there. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For your time. Bye-bye.